The world's largest proven oil reserves sit beneath a country where nearly 1 in 3 people has already fled. Foreign military advisors from rival powers operate openly. Sanctions tighten, economies collapse, and warships patrol nearby waters. Officially, it's about drugs, democracy, and regional stability. Unofficially, something far bigger may be unfolding. The question isn't whether Venezuela is in crisis. The question is whether the United States believes that crisis has reached a point where force becomes an option, and why that moment would be now. This topic matters because Venezuela isn't just another troubled nation. It sits in America's immediate neighborhood, holds strategic resources the global economy still depends on, and has become a focal point for competition between the United States and its geopolitical rivals. When instability reaches this scale so close to home, history shows Washington rarely stays indifferent. Understanding how Venezuela arrived at this point helps explain why the idea of U.S. military intervention, once dismissed as conspiracy, is now openly debated by analysts, diplomats, and defense planners. To understand the present, you have to rewind to the late 20th century. In 1999, Hugo Chavez rose to power, promising to rewrite Venezuela's political and economic order. He framed his movement as a revolution against corruption, inequality, and what he described as U.S. imperial influence. Oil revenues funded massive social programs, but they also cemented the state's total control over the energy sector. As long as oil prices remained high, the system held together. But it came at a cost. Institutions weakened, private investment fled, and the economy became almost entirely dependent on crude exports. Relations with Washington deteriorated rapidly. By the early 2000s, mistrust had hardened into open hostility. The brief 2002 coup attempt against Chavez, still debated and deeply controversial, left a permanent scar. From that point forward, Venezuelan leadership defined itself in opposition to the United States. Anti-American rhetoric became state policy, and alignment with Washington's rivals became a strategic choice rather than an accident. After Chavez's death in 2013, Nicolas Maduro inherited a system already under strain. When oil prices collapsed in the mid-2000s, Venezuela's economy imploded. Mismanagement, corruption, and underinvestment crippled state oil company PDVSA. Production fell from over 3 million barrels per day in the late 1990s to a fraction of that level by the 2020s. Infrastructure aged, refineries failed, and skilled engineers emigrated en masse. What remained was an oil superpower that could no longer reliably extract, refine, or export its own resource. Sanctions followed, escalating sharply after disputed elections and human rights concerns. Washington framed these measures as targeted pressure on officials, but their impact spread across the entire economy. Oil exports shrank further. Access to international finance evaporated. Attempts to diversify into natural gas or attract foreign partners repeatedly collapsed as licenses were revoked and projects frozen. Each failure reinforced a vicious cycle. Less revenue meant fewer repairs meant lower production, and lower production meant deeper collapse. The economic fallout has been historic. Venezuela's GDP contracted dramatically over the past decade, placing its peacetime collapse among the worst on record. Hyperinflation at its peak rendered the national currency nearly unusable, forcing widespread dollarization in daily life. While inflation later slowed from its most extreme levels, it remained volatile and deeply damaging. Food insecurity, power outages, and shortages of basic medicine became routine realities for millions. The human consequences are impossible to ignore. By the mid-2020s, nearly 8 million Venezuelans were living abroad, according to United Nations agencies, making it one of the largest displacement crises in the world. Neighboring countries absorbed the majority of refugees, but the effects rippled far beyond the region. Migration pressures reached the U.S. southern border, turning Venezuela's internal collapse into a domestic political issue inside the United States itself. From Washington's perspective, this convergence set off alarms. The Monroe Doctrine may be centuries old, but the strategic instinct behind it never vanished. The idea of rival powers establishing a durable foothold so close to U.S. territory cuts directly against long-standing American security assumptions. What once looked like ideological posturing began to resemble something more concrete: foreign advisors on the ground, joint military exercises, and technology transfers in a state already teetering on collapse. Meanwhile, the security environment inside Venezuela deteriorated further. Armed groups, criminal networks, and cross-border smuggling operations flourished in regions where the state's authority eroded. Accusations of ties between elements of the government and narcotics trafficking became a central justification for harsher U.S. measures. Washington increasingly framed the situation not only as a political crisis, but as a transnational security threat. This is where speculation about military options gained traction. Publicly, U.S. officials consistently emphasized diplomacy, sanctions, and regional cooperation. Privately, analysts noted that contingency planning is a standard feature of defense policy. When instability threatens to spill across borders, militaries plan, even if they hope never to act. Naval deployments, joint exercises, and increased intelligence activity in the Caribbean were officially tied to counter-narcotics and humanitarian preparedness. Critics argued the scale and composition of these forces suggested preparation for scenarios far beyond policing drug routes. The presence of amphibious ships, advanced missile defense vessels, and large numbers of Marines inevitably fueled debate. Such assets are designed for high-intensity operations, not just patrols. While no official invasion plan has been announced, history shows that similar buildups preceded past interventions justified under different banners. Panama in 1989, for example, was framed around drugs and stability. Iraq in 2003 around weapons and security. In both cases, regime change followed, yet capability alone does not equal intent. The greatest restraint on U.S. action is not military weakness, but political and strategic cost. An invasion would not end with the fall of a government. It would begin a far more difficult phase, stabilizing a fractured society, restoring essential services, and managing a population deeply suspicious of foreign intervention. Such commitments can last decades, draining resources and public support. At the same time, indefinite pressure carries its own dangers. A state left in prolonged collapse does not simply remain frozen. Infrastructure continues to decay. Armed groups grow stronger. Foreign influence deepens. Refugee flows accelerate. From a strategic standpoint, the cost of inaction rises alongside the risks of action. This is the uncomfortable dilemma facing policymakers. Tolerate a worsening situation with global implications, or risk escalation by attempting to force change. Another factor often overlooked is precedent. Once a framework is established, sanctions, delegitimization, security designations, and military presence, it becomes easier to justify further steps. Each escalation is framed as a response to the last, narrowing the space for diplomacy. In such environments, miscalculation becomes the greatest threat. A single incident at sea, a misinterpreted radar signal, or a localized clash could trigger consequences no one officially intended. International reactions would complicate matters further. Any unilateral U.S. intervention would face sharp criticism and legal challenges without broad international authorization. Regional powers like Brazil and Mexico have consistently opposed military solutions, emphasizing negotiation instead. Others, overwhelmed by migration pressures, might quietly welcome decisive action. Meanwhile, Russia and China would face their own calculations. All of this explains why the question isn't framed simply as whether the U.S. will invade Venezuela, but why the idea has moved from fringe speculation into serious strategic discussion. Oil reserves, mass migration, great power competition, and state collapse have converged into a single flashpoint. From Washington's perspective, the perceived cost of doing nothing may now rival the risks of doing something. As of now, no invasion has occurred, and diplomacy, however strained, remains officially on the table. Military presence signals readiness, not inevitability. But readiness itself sends a message, one that both allies and adversaries understand clearly. Venezuela's crisis is no longer just a domestic tragedy. It's a geopolitical test case for how far the United States is willing to go to prevent instability and rival influence in its own hemisphere. And that brings us to the uncomfortable question at the heart of this story. If economic pressure fails, diplomacy stalls, and the situation continues to deteriorate, what option does Washington believe it has left? And at what cost? Is military intervention a line the U.S. will never cross, or contingency quietly waiting for the moment it seems unavoidable? If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like the video, subscribe for deeper geopolitical analysis, and share your perspective in the comments. Do you think the United States is genuinely preparing for invasion, or is this pressure campaign designed to force change without ever firing a shot?